Hey everybody, welcome to the 1947 Rise podcast, a podcast that helps India-born, US-trained Indians get integrated into the Indian technology ecosystem and inspires them to move back to India to build massive tech companies and or help enable the tech ecosystem. We do this by interviewing India-born, US-trained Indians who have moved back to India and built massive tech companies themselves and or helped enable the tech ecosystem. I'm excited to have Gautam Chopra on the 1947 Rise podcast today. Gautam is the founder and CEO of BeatO. BeatO's mission is to beat diabetes in India. In the last 6 years, BeatO has expanded from being India's first smartphone connected glucometer kit to India's first personalized health management ecosystem for people with chronic conditions. 1.5 million plus users, 250 plus employees, 30 plus health coaches, and growing. It also holds the world record with 1 million blood sugar tests in one day. Prior to BeatO, Gautam was the head of business development and sales steering at Lufthansa Group. Gautam, welcome to the show.
Hey Shiva, glad to be here.
Awesome. Let's start by you walking us through your journey of growing up in India and then moving to the Germany and then ended up moving back to India. What made you move back to India and how was the move like?
Yeah, well, it's been already a fairly long journey, but Shiva, so I grew up in Delhi. I went to school here, and typical service, background. My parents were with the services. My dad worked with the Indian Railways. My mother was with the defense services. So grew up, I would say, in a fairly protective environment, living in railway colonies and living in as part of a community. And always, growing up, there was looking at the bhaiyas and the didis in these colonies. You always wanted to perhaps become an engineer or a doctor, and of course your parents also wanted that, and then perhaps move to the US and earn a great living for yourself. So that's how my sister and I were typically molded as when we were growing up. But once I finished school, I got a scholarship to study in the UK, and I had a choice to continue, with studying in St. Stephen's College here in Delhi North Campus, versus going abroad and leaving my comfort zone. So this was really the first opportunity for me to witness the outside world, and I took that, and I moved to the UK. And I must say, I think those 4 years of being in the 4 to 5 years of being in the UK, studying and then working, I think just transformed me quite a bit. I think it exposed me to being able to not only live on my own, but I think be able to, take simple decisions, which in a way, if I look back, was starting to mold me for the future. And so I finished my graduation. I worked in London for a while. Then I had a great opportunity to move back to India at that point in time, and work in management consulting. So I took this another decision to leave everything in the UK and move back to India. And I came back, started working with Deloitte Consulting here. And within a year or so, I'd got an admit for the Indian School of Business at Hyderabad. And I decided to pursue my MBA because I wanted to, of course, hone other skills beyond engineering for myself. And went through that year. I think it was one of the most fantastic years of my life. I think that was also very pivotal because it exposed me to so many other backgrounds of folks who were coming, with myriad experiences from abroad and of course from India. And it also, I think that this was around 2008, 2009. So we used to have professors coming from the US, from Europe, etc. So it gave us a really nice blend of experience of what it means to, be able to, step out of your comfort zone and be able to chase your dreams. So that was really, I would say, starting to build the foundation. But unfortunately, 2009, when I graduated, was a pretty bad year. I was among the lucky few to have got a good placement with Lufthansa. I joined the leadership development program. Again, I had a choice between staying back in India and working in consulting versus, going now this time to a completely different geography where there would be a language barrier and needing me to pick up, beyond the complexity of the work, the complexity of also the language. So I moved to Germany. I spent the next 7 years, loved that period. I was first for about 4.5, 5 years in Germany, then 2 years in Brussels in Belgium. And I learned the language, and perhaps I was working in the most complex work environment because I was responsible for setting up the biggest transatlantic joint venture that
Mhm.
existed in history between Lufthansa and the US carriers. And what was really exciting for me was that on the outside, of course, most of my interaction with the US partners, the United Airlines and Air Canada used to be in English. But internally, within the Lufthansa world, I had to translate everything and bring it back into German.
Mhm.
And I think this also, gave me that ability to be far more adaptable to different kinds of situations and still succeed, and gave me that confidence.
Yep.
And so, this was, of course, all the grounding. But in 2014, I feel that there is definitely something called DI, and various things come together to help you decide what your future will hold for you. But in 2014, unfortunately, I was diagnosed with prediabetes, early stage diabetes, and it just so happened I was back in India for a holiday when I reconnected with a friend of mine, Yash, from school, and I was really shocked to learn that Yash had actually become a very heavy diabetic. So that was really the genesis of BeatO, because when we started looking at this problem, and especially going through the experience that Yash had, it was uh, it was really alarming that he was diagnosed with an HbA1c of 9.5, and now many of the viewers may not have a complete understanding of HbA1c, but in terms of the seriousness of diabetes, it was pretty high for
Mhm.
Yash. And we decided that we wanted to take stock of our own health and do something about it. But when we started digging deeper, Shiva, we realized that Yash's experience was not unique. Unfortunately, there were lakhs and millions of people in India who were actually going through this battle with diabetes. And it was not just the sheer volume or the number of people who were unfortunately, becoming diabetic. It was also the fact that most 80% or more of these individuals were actually had uncontrolled diabetes. And this was the surprising fact for us. And when we started even, peeling the onion layer further, we realized that unlike the West, and especially because I had experience of being in Europe, being
Yep.
in the UK, etc., we realized that because in India all outpatient care, whether it is doctors, fee or medicines, etc., because it's all out of pocket and the individual actually pays for it.
Yep.
Unfortunately, the healthcare system was not really incentivized to keep a person away from the hospital or well managed. Rather, the monetization happened within. And given that both of us were coming from technology background, that was also the time 2015, 16, when I would say e-commerce startups had started to come up.
Mhm.
We started benchmarking and realized that there was enough clinical evidence that if we could build digital tools, then we could actually diabetes was the perfect candidate that could get managed and tackled digitally. So with this just simple thought in mind, I flew back to Belgium, where I was living. And for the next month or two, it was still brewing in my mind. And it coincidentally happened that Yash visited Brussels.
Mhm.
In This was in Jan of 2015, and more or less convinced me to move back and set up something which we could help not only ourselves with, but also the millions of other people who
Yep.
unfortunately went through chronic conditions like diabetes. So that was really the genesis of my I would say starting up. Of course, along the way, I got inspired and motivated by a whole lot of other people.
Mhm.
I joke also at times that on my trip in 2014 when I was back, I actually was look, so Kunal Behel and Rohit Bansal were my classmates in school.
Yep.
And I was having a chat with my dad, deciding to move back, and they were like completely afraid of what is this guy even thinking about. He's going to leave a well settled job, a well-paying job and in aviation, because that allowed us to travel the world. Even my parents loved to come, and they could travel the world for free. And it was like a big jolt for my family that this guy is just going to come back and set up something which no one is aware of. But then I quoted their example and what Snapdeal had been able to do, what Kunal and Rohit were able to do. So I think these factors allowed me to firm up my decision and move back to India and really start up in the field of diabetes.
Yeah. I think odds were against you in many ways. One, your background given aviation, and then you coming back and starting something in, health tech. And I think back in 2014, 2015, most of the funding went towards, business models that have been, proved in the West. So let's say Amazon for India or Uber for India and all that stuff. How was it in the beginning when you were looking to launch BeatO, recruiting, raising capital, and then along the way, were there times where you thought, man, I don't know if it's going to work out or not. Let's figure something else now, or move back, or would love to hear around those things.
No, so Shiva, in any entrepreneur's life, and you're an entrepreneur now yourself, these emotions will always be there, not only month on month, but also day on day. And of course, we went through our own emotions early on, and now those emotions have changed, of course, over the last few years, with us having made progress on various fronts. But starting out, so we did have a few benchmarks perhaps coming out of the US, but those were also relatively early. But unlike commerce, healthcare is very different, right? In terms of you can't draw parallels from the US or anywhere else in India, because the infrastructure hardly exists, right? So we are the doctor-patient ratio is abysmal. There is no basic primary infrastructure allowing people to, preventive care is missing completely. So it was a big unknown. And you couldn't just copy paste what was happening in the US and bring it here, which we tried, by the way, to begin with, and miserably failed. So we set up, we made a simple mobile app, and we created a web portal or a dashboard for the doctors, and we went clinic on clinic and hospital by hospital, trying to onboard doctors and their patients, but it didn't work out at all. I mean, there was no monetization in that model. Nobody was willing to pay. There was hardly any customer engagement, because people were asked to manually log in their information. So it was tough in terms of initially finding the product market fit, Shiva. While we knew the problem, and for Yash and me, we understood what possible solutions we could build to solve for that problem. It took us a little bit of time to really find that product market fit, which the Indian consumer would be willing to pay for. I think the first 2.5 years, just went in, us being able to iterate. And I must say, and this perhaps contributed to where we've also, come now. We were very fast to iterate and experiment and find what works, what doesn't. And I think the first 2.5 to 3 years really went in different forms of experiments and iterations for us to really understand what was it that consumers were going to be willing to pay, and then build that for scale. So, of course, team building is always going to be the prime focus for founders, and that initial team, the core team that you bring on board, has to be extremely important. I was very fortunate, of course, to have a great co-founder in Yash.
Yeah.
And then we were very lucky to have a fantastic co-founder and CTO in Kunal to join us, and then a really a superb team of initial believers, I would say. These are not just employees; they are believers in a founder's vision. For us to have carried out these experiments and find really something that now we're able to scale to great heights. So that was one. I think funding, initial funding, Shiva, was not much of a challenge. I would say seed and angel investment was not much of a challenge to get us kick started. However, of course, because it takes longer in terms of being able to find what would work, and also the lack of, I would say, understanding in terms of core domain knowledge of healthcare creates, a little more time required by for education for the venture capitalist,
Mm-hmm.
because I think it's mostly transactional businesses that they understood at till that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
So healthcare, given how the different stakeholders are aligned within healthcare ecosystem in India, and traversing through that to be able to build a large business, I think required some education for them. But we were lucky enough, after the first difficult period where we were finding it hard to get early stage VCs, Bloom VC and Leo really believed in us at that point in time. I think they resonated with our vision. They believed in the founding team,
Yeah.
and they really found what we were trying to build in terms of the seeds for this full stack ecosystem which we have today were already getting sown at that time. And I think Rajul from Leo Capital and Arpit from Blue really recognized that this is what could actually become perhaps in the future the largest diabetes care ecosystem in the world, if not not just in India. And so, that was really the belief that we as a founding team needed at that point in time, that leap of faith. And these guys took it. And I must say, the journey with them over the last 4 5 years has been absolutely fantastic. So they were the initial believers. And of course, the journey has evolved since then.
Yeah. So you were able to convince, your parents by giving them the example of Kunal, and I think you're setting another example where where odds are against you, and later on when and this thing is only accelerating, right? People are coming. I think it's much easier now, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to narratives, right? So I'm glad that things are working your way, and I think the why was really strong for you guys. That helped as well in convincing the early backers. And Gautam, correct me if I'm wrong. I think BeatO has expanded to other markets as well. And walk us like what's where are you today, and what's the grand vision or magical outcome that you see for yourself, for your co-founders, co-workers, and stakeholders for BeatO?
Yeah. A great question, Shiva. So, geographically, our prime focus has always been India. It will continue to be so. We actually started stepping out to Singapore. This was just before COVID, and then COVID happened. So, we halted those plans. And right now, the key focus is going to be continue to be India. Perhaps in the next year or so, we will look at other emerging markets as potential geographies to take our solution and platform to. But I think when we look at what we've been able to accomplish and where we want to go in the future, Shiva, there are more than 100 million Indians who unfortunately are diabetic, and they are diagnosed diabetic. There are perhaps 100+ million more who are undiagnosed. But even if you look at that set of 100 million individuals, 80% of them have uncontrolled diabetes. And a large part of that is contributed by three factors. First is, of course, the overall awareness of understanding the seriousness of this condition. The lack of access, while there are 5% specialists or diabetologists and endocrinologists in metros and tier ones, 5% beyond tier one, 95% of people with diabetes actually reside in tier two cities and beyond.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the kind of gap, and then eventually affordability of care, right?
Yeah.
Which for I think most Indians becomes extremely important as a factor. So at BeatO, I think we take pride in the fact that we are building a solution for Bharat. We are able with our solution to take affordable, good quality care into millions of households within India and make a very positive health impact in their lives. So we take pride in the fact that the solution that we have is not only affordable, but it's actually creating clinical impact, positive health outcomes in people's lives. So when you look at our clinical results, these have been done at scale, Shiva, where we've been able to demonstrate a sharp improvement in sugar levels, not sugar levels and other health vitals, not only in the initial short duration of 2 to 3 months, but over even 2 years to 3 years. And when you start looking at that impact and look at this broader, view that BeatO is being able to contribute to, there's a massive, cost burden on society that diabetes can have. So we are actually favorably contributing in reducing that societal burden that these complications coming out of diabetes can potentially have. So I think for us, the vision is clear. We want to be in every diabetic household in India, being able to provide to them good quality access to diabetes care at a very affordable cost, and making a strong clinical impact so that we can make India, diabetes complication free from complications arising out of diabetes in the near future.
Love it. And as you said, early on, entrepreneur's life is, or the journey is mostly about the emotions, right? Highs and lows. So, Gautam, when you're feeling overwhelmed, unfocused, are there any frameworks that you use that puts you or helps you going back on track?
Yeah, so I think the biggest framework for me, I would say, are two, right? And these are not your management consulting framework. One is your co-founder, right? Or team of co-founders, right? So there are certain complex issues and problems that you can't necessarily share or even expect anybody to understand, but your co-founders will. So hence I said, the founding team and your trust with each other becomes extremely important. And I've been extremely lucky to have a fantastic team of co-founders to depend on, to be able to reduce my stress and tension at times, and they absorb it and vice versa. Mm-hmm. So we are all stable at when you take the three of us at any point in time, right? So it becomes extremely important. And then I think the second very critical fact is you're this, and it might sound like preaching, but it's the support that your family gives, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm fortunate enough that everything gets taken care of at home. So my entire attention can be, of course, in building and raising BeatO. And I think those are important aspects in any entrepreneur's life. So once those two are clear, then I think the third important aspect is, and we often neglect it, even though we are healthcare entrepreneurs, is your own health, right? Both mental well-being as well as, of course, physical well-being. Because that's what gets you going the next day to be able to tackle the new challenges that will keep coming along the way. So I think in terms of a framework, you need these three variables to work for you more often than not, for you to be able to balance, the various things and challenges you'll keep confronting and solving for.
Gautam, assume that you're unpacking the following to a 10-year-old. First is, can you give a overview of the healthcare ecosystem in India? And then the follow-up question would be, what needs to be true for India to have, healthcare system which is democratized to the masses?
Yeah. So Shiva, I think your last statement was extremely important. Democratizing healthcare, because it is each and every individual's right to remain healthy, right? And unfortunately, so far, we haven't been able to do a great job of it. And it's largely been an outcome of the fact that, of course, the overall spending on healthcare by the government and other stakeholders hasn't been that high that it can actually make an impact given the sheer population that we have, which means that the primary healthcare infrastructure is very weak in our country. And when you look at any developed country, or even most emerging countries moving on their journey to becoming a developed country, then the primary healthcare infrastructure actually helps to reduce the burden of secondary and tertiary healthcare, right? Here, unfortunately, so far what had been happening was that because of this gap, by the time people reached secondary or tertiary care, it was already too late. And the second problem statement for us is that there are so many households that actually enter into bankruptcy every year simply because there has been a catastrophic healthcare expense that they've had to make. So I think as an ecosystem, it has to evolve, to significant heights. Of course, chronic conditions form a critical part of it, given the fact that most of the mortality now in India is largely coming out of conditions like diabetes, hypertension, cholesterol, cardiac, etc. And these are situations, these are problems that need to be tackled at the primary healthcare level. And given this gap, Shiva, of course, and the sheer volume of patients that we have in India who are either diagnosed, even a significantly larger population which is undiagnosed, digital tools and solutions are the only way to be able to reach these individuals in a very cost-effective manner.
Yeah.
And hence, us as well as several other tech startups have a very pivotal role in this journey to make healthcare more equitable and democratized in the future. I must say and compliment also the initiatives that have been taken recently, and some of these I was myself just made aware of in the recent past. But the way simple by the government and other stakeholders, simple things like, for example, COVID that we were able to pull off so well. I mean, more than 1 billion vaccines delivered, and such tracked so well in terms of the technology that went across in terms of the COVID app and what information flow was taking between the individuals, the vaccine centers as well as the government, etc. I think those are also very positive signs that it's not just technology entrepreneurs and startups like myself, but also at the highest levels in terms of policymakers, in terms of regulators, in terms of the government. There is an important recognition of the fact that digital tools and solutions are the only cost-effective way to make, to solve for one of the largest problems that we're going to confront with in the near future, which is, delivering good quality healthcare to a mass population. Mm-hmm. So, at least at BeatO, this mission is very clear for us. We look at solving for Bharat. We want to cater and make an impact in millions of households, and work with the different stakeholders to be able to deliver that, clinically validated impact, and make improve the quality of life of these individuals.
Yeah, and given the size of the population, I think the only way forward is leapfrogging, and that will happen via technology. Plus, there has to be a collaboration between all stakeholders, tech entrepreneurs like yourself and policymakers and the government. Gautam, will switch gears here. One or maybe it could be a couple of advices either that you've gotten from mentors or you've read it somewhere that really changed your life, in a good way.
Yeah, I think one key thing which I think a lot of people used to tell us, but I've got to experience myself, Shiva, over the last few years, is the value of perseverance and patience. I think if you really believe in something which you want to solve for in terms of a problem, then there may be n number of ways of building that solution, but you have to be able to be prepared to face both failures and successes, and go through that entire journey. Because eventually, when you look back, it's actually the journey that determines your success or the failure, and not just the eventual outcome. So I feel that I individually, personally, have become significantly more patient with different things than I was perhaps early on. And I've seen also that eventually perseverance does pay off. So especially if you're solving for a very hard problem and needing to educate so many different stakeholders to be able to believe in you, it takes time, and you can be impulsive, but which we were early on. But I think the journeys taught us that there is a significant value of perseverance. So I think that's one learning which is extremely important. And as just part of that, when you're building a company, I would say, and you're looking at, of course, a lot of competitors, it's easy to get distracted from your mission and what you're trying to accomplish. And it still happens to us too, because you have so many voices, coming from left and right. But it requires one to then sit back and focus on what you truly believe is going to work, and be true to yourself and to your strengths. And of course, trying to overcome your weaknesses over a period of time. But I think there is significant value in not getting distracted and being focused. And like I said, persevering in that focus to accomplish the end objective.
Be impatient with actions and patient with the end goal or the destiny. And Gautam, is there anything that you have recently changed your mind on?
Yes, certainly. I used to so far think that, and this is a very positive development, at least for me in my mind, that we are somewhat alone trying to solve this problem of healthcare in the world, in India. But I was very pleasantly surprised when I interacted, with some of the stakeholders recently when I was at Viva Tech in Paris,
Mm-hmm.
with Indian stakeholders, the chairman of the NHA and some of the others. The kind of work that policymakers and the government is also trying to do and work along with startups like us to build the future of healthcare is extremely encouraging. So, I've definitely changed my mind that, the tech entrepreneurs are alone in this journey. I think there is a very strong, relationship that we need to start building with other stakeholders, because they are also thinking of much bigger, larger vision for Indian healthcare in the future, which is a great sign personally for me, because it will take two to tango. We can't do it alone. So the policymakers and the government have a very critical role to play here, and they're very open to suggestions, as well as the fact that there is a very strong resonance with using technology and digital tools, and helping them to further their vision of an equitable and democratized healthcare for all Indians.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's this thing. This is what I believe in, which is, tech entrepreneurs and policy makers will help shape the destiny of India, and intentions are right on both sides. And Gautam, do you think it could be a communication gap? For you, it was more of like, you realized this while you were with them
Yeah.
at an event. Do you think that could be something?
Yeah, I think, Shiva, it's not so much a communication gap than the lack of interaction, or the ability of for interaction, or creating platforms for exchange between, I would say, entrepreneurs in a specific field with the right stakeholders in terms of policy making, regulatory, as well as, of course, the government. I think, we've been fortunate since we won the National Startup Award, early this year. We've had access to many stakeholders, which has allowed us to open our minds as well and learn what is really going on, which will positively impact, as well as, of course, what are the various areas of improvement that these policymakers and government is thinking around. But I think beyond, so we now there is a stage where we have this platform, which is really useful, I must say, and is really eye-opening for us too. But I do hope that there are many such other platforms going, into the future, because the government does recognize that tech entrepreneurs and startups is the only way that the country is going to make significant progress going forward. And hence, I think there is definitely a need for creating this exchange on a more frequent in a more frequent way among entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs or startups, with the right stakeholders, in within the government.
Got it. And Gautam, we or I know you, because of BeatO, because of tech entrepreneurs. What do your friends know you for? Who are you outside of work?
Well, what do my friends know me for? I think I'm a fairly so I love to cook. I love to spend my time uh, raking up recipes for people if they're coming over. I'm a great host. So I love to feed people and ensure that I can give them some healthy food. But it's very tasty too. So yeah, so food is one thing that our world revolves around in my family. And And yeah, so second is, of course, I think they know me by BeatO as well now, because I think as I end up spending and talking to them also a lot about what they can help me with along the way. So yeah, personally, I really enjoy whenever whatever time I get to, of course, spend time and play with my children. So I have an 8-year-old son and a 6-year-old daughter. They have very diverse interests. So my daughter loves to play football. So I'm a keen footballer too.
Mm-hmm.
So we dribble with each other, and that's a great way for fitness too for me. And then with my son, he's into chess, so it also allows me to sort of, when I play with him, build up my a little more, exercise the muscles,
Yeah.
uh, in the brain. So
Uh-huh.
exercise my brain a little more with my son, which makes me sharper, I hope, for my work at BeatO as well.
Yeah.
So I love to spend time with them, because the otherwise, in general, life is moving fast, and I want to be able to contribute with whatever I can at home too at times.
Got it. And then what's that one dish, that you've kind of like nailed it, and your friends are like, they know you because of that now?
Okay. So there's this basil Thai chicken and basil Thai fish that I'm able to make. It's so we spent some my wife and I we spent some time in Bangkok in Thailand. We were sent by Lufthansa there to work. I was sent there for about 4 months, and I picked up a lot of Thai cuisine, and I love to cook that. And the second is I love to barbecue. So the only two things that we brought back from Germany, Shiva. One was a statue of Shiva, actually, Lord Shiva, which we had inherited from a German in Frankfurt. So we brought that statue back, and the other one was my Weber grill. So so those are the two things. And yeah, the third thing was my Nespresso machine. So those are the three things I got back. So love to grill as well, and of course weather permitting. So the winters are a great time here in Delhi, of course, and Delhi NCR, to be able to do that.
Yeah, no, love it. And Gautam, really, really appreciate you for, making the time to come on the podcast, and walk us through your journey so far. And I think you're really going after a very high impact problem, and I look forward to, what the future holds for you, your coworkers, your co-founders, and all your stakeholders. Thanks a lot.
Great, was a pleasure talking to you, Shiva. Have a great weekend.